The Supreme Court is set to hear oral arguments today over a host of state laws that ban transgender athletes from taking part in women's and girls' sports.
Two athletes, one from Idaho and the other from West Virginia, argued that the laws violate their civil rights by discriminating against them based on gender. Now, both states have defended their laws, saying Congress intended to allow divisions in sports based on sex assigned at birth, not personal gender identity. Both athletes won lower court injunctions that allowed them to continue to compete.
For more on this, we're joined now by NBC News senior Supreme Court reporter Lawrence Hurley. Lawrence, good to have you with us. So the justices are going to have to decide whether these state bans violate Title IX of the Civil Rights Act and then also the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Walk us through it here. What are the biggest issues that are at stake here?
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue, as I'm sure you're aware, that's been kind of trickling up for a while now. And it seemed at one point that the momentum was in favor of transgender rights in general. But obviously, with recent political changes and the election of President Donald Trump, who's very outspoken against transgender rights, it started to turn in the opposite direction. And of course, you have a Supreme Court that has a 6-3 conservative majority that just last year upheld state bans on gender-affirming care for transgender teens, which is not a good omen for the transgender athletes going into this case. But on the other hand, as you mentioned, this involves Title IX, that bans discrimination in education. And the Supreme Court in a 2020 case involving Title VII, which is the federal law that bans discrimination in employment, actually ruled in favor of transgender rights by saying that that law does cover both gender identity and sexual orientation. So going into this case, the big question is which of those cases kind of looms largest for the conservative majority? Will any of the conservative justices who were in the majority in that 2020 ruling feel the same way about Title IX as they did about Title VII? Or will it be more like the gender-affirming care case? So that's going to be what we'll be looking at in the oral arguments today.
Lawrence, the American Civil Liberties Union is one of the organizations representing the student athletes. What are their key arguments?
Yeah, so they're basically saying that this is obviously, for them, a simple case of discrimination, right? That this is, these are women and girls who identify as women and girls who want to participate in girls or women's sports. They're not talking about, you know, the Olympics or the NCAA. Those organizations are already kind of shifting their rules against transgender athletes. They're talking more about high school and kind of one of the students here is a college student, although she didn't actually make the teams that she sought to get into. And then there are issues also bubbling beneath about whether transgender girls actually have the kind of physical advantages that the states claim they do, especially when they've transitioned extremely young, as one of the plaintiffs in this case did, where she never actually went through male puberty at all. And they say there are some factual issues that suggest that the state couldn't or shouldn't be able to ban her from participating in high school sports.
Lawrence, there's potentially a lot at stake here. I mean, right now, more than 24 states have laws on the books that limit or ban transgender women from competing in women's sports. It's also, we know, been a big part of President Trump's policy. He's used executive orders and other Department of Education enforcement efforts to just try and restrict transgender participation in school sports. So how are those states that have these bans on the books in the Trump administration, what's their argument here?
Yeah, I mean, the stakes are pretty big here, right? Because although you could look at it as just being about sports, it's actually, if the court touches upon this Title IX question and rules one way or another, it could have a big impact on all kinds of other issues that have been coming up as well, including this ongoing debate about restroom access, which we've seen in the news as well in recent years. So, and the states, you know, they're just arguing that this is not a form of discrimination at all. They're saying, you know, it's legal to separate genders in sports, and transgender women have this what they perceive to be a advantage, physical advantage from their gender assigned at birth. So that's the kind of what they're going to be pushing in this case. And one of the issues is whether the justices will see that as more like the gender affirming care case, or whether they see it more as the employment discrimination case.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.